Well, as we talked yesterday, the Living Legend format saw an emergency ban and restricted announcement in its honor in an effort to shore up and tighten up matchup spreads for the upcoming World Championship, which is, of course, a dual format tournament. It's Classic Constructed and Living Legend. And of course, the team over at LSS saw the writing on the wall, saw what the format had basically become, and tried to make some changes here in an effort to provide both a better viewing experience and a better playing experience, because I think we can all agree that the Living Legend format up to this point in this current iteration has not been the most enjoyable testing or playing experience, which has fundamentally led to a rise in questioning of what this format's purpose is, and how at this point now, with the rise of Silver Age and the announcement of Silver Age, it almost kind of lives in the same space that Silver Age is doing, except maybe Silver Age does it better. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to do something a little bit different because I feel like there are a lot of great comments on several of my most recent videos about both of these formats, and I want to highlight a couple of them, go through and give you my own personal takes alongside of what I was going to talk about as well. But I'll start by saying this. I am still a believer in the possibility of Living Legend format. Conceptually, the Living Legend format is perhaps the future of Flesh and Blood, or at least the idea of what it should be is like where Flesh and Blood is always going to sort of lead to. As heroes rotate out, you're either going to lose players that mained those heroes, because this is essentially a fighting game and people will stick to a hero until that hero rotates. You're either going to lose those players, or you're going to give them a new avenue to use that hero, to play that hero, and to engage on the skill level and the axis that they've learned the game on. And that's what Living Legend is, or at least that's what it could be. Now, the issue is that throughout the lifespan of the game, there have been cards, there have been heroes, and there have been, hero text boxes more specifically, that have pushed the limits of what Flesh and Blood can actually handle. And it's those types of cards and heroes and text boxes that make the Living Legend format so much at a disparity, right? Those cards and those powerful heroes are so high up, and everything else is just kind of down here, that there's really, there's no way for a hero that is either just hit the Living Legend status in a more balanced state of the game, or a hero that is still not hitting the Living Legend status to really compete with the full throttle, full power versions of some of these other more high-powered heroes. Now, there are outliers to this. This is the exception, not the rule. Heroes like Dash.io might have the capacity to do that, but by and large, some of the best heroes in the game, and some of the best weapons in the game, and some of the best cards in the game are also the cards that are most broken, right? I mean, that's true of most card games, and it is most highlighted in the Living Legend format. And that's what we've run into with the Living Legend format being more pushed towards center stage. And it's interesting because that's what you want. You want an eternal format game. That's what the game sold itself on at the beginning, and I think that's what we all, well, at least for me personally, that's what I really like about it. I know that my cards can be played in perpetuity. But there's a format that is now possibly doing that, but doing it better and more cheaply in a way that still has a lot of the same feeling of what Flesh and Blood provides, and that is Silver Age. And so you have this interesting dichotomy now of, like, for the past year or two, Living Legend format has been the up-and-coming thing that's going to eventually supplant CC in some way, shape, or form, because it's where you can play all of those heroes from 10, 20 years ago, whatever. However long Flesh and Blood lasts, I believe it'll last for as long as they want it to, because it's a beautiful game. But now, Silver Age has the same hook. It's an eternal format with a very tightly curated ban list. And they've gone further by saying you can only play commons and rares, which means that some of those problematic majestics and some of the spiky majestics and legendaries and things like that have been removed from the format. It's cheaper as well, so anyone can join in. And LSS has gone on record saying that this is a $20 deck. This is a $20 deck that can get you your ticket, a $20 ticket into the $2.5 million Pro Tour, which means they're going to feature this format, Silver Age, as a competitive format. To me, this means that next year it's Classic Constructed and Silver Age in a dual format tournament. I guess that's the way you said it, a dual format tournament for Worlds. And honestly, I'm here for it. If it's anything like the format is right now, it's pretty open. There's aggressive decks, of course, in Silver Age that are doing quite well, and then there are hyper fatigue decks that can do quite well. Regardless, though, it kind of puts LSS in an interesting spot. Do they lean heavily into Silver Age and then kind of push aside, eschew, is that the right word? Eschew, E-S-C-H-E-W? I don't know. Someone tell me in a comment below. Do they eschew Living Legends format? Does that format kind of just go off to the side? Does it become the next Blitz, which gets sort of rotated out in favor of Silver Age, which kind of does it, but maybe better? Or is there room for both of these formats? Because obviously there are some heroes that just function in a completely different way with Majestics and Legendaries. And would it behoove them to continue to push and retool the Living Legend format so that you can play those cards? I think it would. But is there space for that, and are players interested in engaging in that? And that's what we're going to look at here in just a moment, because if we tab over to that other screen, if I do this correctly, that's the hope. If I do it correctly, while I do it live, that's not the one. This is the one. We'll just leave that in. We'll just not even bother with it. These are the comments that I got in yesterday's video. Yesterday's surprise bans, what happens next, okay? And there's a couple of them that I really want to hone in on. And first of all, shout out for anyone that left a comment. I think this is kind of fun. I like the idea of reading these and giving credit where credit is due. Wiggly Wooba says, just ban Chain and Starvo format is fixed. I don't know if that's the case. I think if you're banning Starvo, you're doing a lot of good, because Starvo is Chain and Starvo are like perennially the top two most hit heroes in this format. And when both of those heroes were brought down, I feel like a lot more enthusiasm was put into it, but I think that's also anecdotal from what I'm hearing. And I think there's a lot of players in Flesh and Blood and a lot of people in this community that are vocal that kind of just hate on that format in general. Like they kind of just find the thing to hate on, and that's unfortunate, because I think there's more to life than just finding something that you're upset with. And I think, you know, maybe they don't give it the credit that it's due. Either way, I do think that this is the most interesting comment, and I've gotten this on multiple occasions, and this is the reason. This comment is the reason why I'm bringing this up, because I have been approached by multiple people now to make a video specifically on this topic, and I actually am kind of against this, but I'll read it for you. The Wizard Tim 8153 says, I'm not sure how much effort would realistically need to go into keeping up with it, but I think LL needs hero-specific ban lists. At first, I was 100% on board with this. I thought this was the way. It makes sense. And I'd been touting this for like a year or so. This was like 2 years ago, when people were saying the same thing for Blitz and for Classic Constructed. And I've started to come around on this, because I saw someone leave this comment in my Discord yesterday. They were like, at this point, there are so many things banned, like in this thing and that thing, in this format and this format, and I'm not sure that at this point, I'm just like, whatever, I'm just going to play Classic Constructed. That comment struck a nerve with me in a good way, because it highlights the danger of hero-specific bans. Because what you're saying is, man, here's a player who really fell in love with Flesh and Blood. They're playing Classic Constructed, but they see this new hero, or their hero just made it to the Living Legend status, and they want to jump in. Now, in order to understand that format, not just to pick up one deck. To pick up one deck, maybe it's okay to go to a page and say, these are the cards that are banned for you. Like, that could be a solution. But at the same time, for any player that wants to like understand a format, they have to go to all of the hero pages and see what's specifically banned and not banned in those formats. Otherwise, they could just get blown out in a game. Now, yes, it's a competitive game. At some point, you have to make the decision, I'm going to commit to this and I'm going to like really learn that. But at the same time, like, things just get sticky, and you need an easy enough entry point into some of these formats so that people will actually engage with them, new players and things like that. And this is a tough sell. Hero-specific ban lists, in addition to normal ban lists, you have 2 ban lists you have to kind of juggle. You're like over here, you're over there. Is it 6 bans, 7? I don't know, right? So the point is, it's tough to follow along with. So therein lies the problem. And I'm actually kind of against this, but I understand the reasoning. And I do think that if you had an elegant solution to incorporate hero-specific bans, it would probably be an easy fix. Well, shouldn't say that. It could be an easy fix. Second emergency LL ban in 3 weeks. It's almost like the rollout of the LL into a high-end competitive format could have been done with more lead time. I think they've acknowledged that. And here's the thing about LSS. They screw up sometimes, just like we all do, but they own it and they don't kind of sweep it under the rug. At least this they have certainly not done that with, right? I can't think of a time that they have, but I'm sure someone is going to point out some random time that they could, point to. For me, I feel like they own it when they make the mistake. Now, you can say, well, they shouldn't be making mistakes. And I'll say, I don't believe you that you're not making any mistakes in your life because let's be honest, that's not true. At the same time, this is a big deal, and I think they are recognizing that they should have done this with more lead time and put more LL format tournaments on display so that they could get more data as well. Now, this is an interesting one. I enjoy playing LL, but it shouldn't be a competitive format. It's a side event format, says Josh Mole 5815. The effort to make it competitively viable is why my locals are upset. I could definitely see this being a format that's a side event style format. It gives you the opportunity to play your old stuff, and everyone's going to play like their old stuff, broken stuff, weird stuff. The people that are going to love this format could love this format. Like, this is a great idea. If this format just becomes more of a casual type format, I could certainly see that. And this kind of echoes that same thing. Gerhard Dom 5933. Lots of numbers today. IMO LL should be primarily about being able to play Living Legend heroes in a competitive environment, not about playing every banned card and having ridiculously high OTK levels of power. I don't know if you could swap that, just take this word out, just playing like LL heroes, period, end of story. Like, that in my mind is the highlight of this comment. It should be about playing those Living Legended heroes. Like, I want to be able to play those heroes and not have them go off into the sunset and never be seen again. The question is, how extensive of a ban list do you have to do? And at what point do you just say, well, we're just playing Classic Constructed. We've just added those other heroes back in. There has to be a distinction, and I want to point that out. Look, there has to be a distinction between Classic Constructed and Living Legend. And the distinction is not strong enough if it's just those heroes that are already gone are back. That's not enough, right? It has to be more than that. And so there has to be something done about this format. Maybe it's singleton. Some people have mentioned that in these comments, like change it to a singleton format, change it to, a hero-specific ban list format, like where you do something like that. There are ways and things that LSS hasn't tried yet that they definitely could try, and I think that they have everything on the table when it comes to the Living Legend format. But I do want to highlight a couple of these comments from the Silver Age video that I released recently. This was from last week, talking about the Silver Age format, and there's a couple of these excitement. There's just a lot of excitement, genuinely so excited for Silver Age. And then they talked about, some good changes. Clearly, this person's been playing a lot because they also agree that Old Knocker was such a good hit and it forced decks to get creative with their building, even though everyone's basically just swapped to Blossom or like the Garland of Spring. It is what it is. So that's pretty cool. Venom Liker says that. Then they went, where is it at? This one. Got out of Flesh and Blood about a year ago because of the price. This format may be enough to get me back in casually at family TCGs. I think that is the highlight reason why this format should be put front and center. This is a budget format that people actively want to engage in, and that LSS has already said they're willing to put on the big stage. And if you're doing that, anyone can walk in and play this tournament. Anyone can walk in and win an event, and that gets more feet in the door. It gets more butts in seats, and that's huge. I think that's huge. That is the selling point of this format. And honestly, the budget aspect of it is what makes it unique from something like, Blitz, where budget was still an issue in Blitz. Even though I love the Blitz format and I'm sad to see it go, budget is still an issue in that format, and there's no arguing with it. I have to concede that point, because you still had decks that were like $800 because legendaries cost so much and fables are playable, and so on and so forth. This one's interesting. I hope now that they're committed to this format, they start seeding in more creative alternate play patterns at lower rarities to mess around with. Sage is going to need unique experiences to stick around. I can't see it being successful if it's watered down stepping stones for new players forever. To some degree, I agree with this. To another degree, I say, at a fundamental level, it's still playing flesh and blood, and it's still an incredibly engaging back and forth game. I will say, and I'll put myself on the big screen for this, I've played many games of this format so far. I was playing it when it was Project Blue as well, in paper, on Talishar as well. And one thing that I do note about this format, it is very numbers heavy. It is very mathy. It's very like, I just have better numbers and therefore I'm going to win this matchup. Or almost at sometimes it felt very much more coin flippy than Blitz. If you end up going second, you just win because your numbers threaten both damage and cards from their hand, and they don't get to reload because you're going second, and that's when you're throwing your 8 to 14 damage, right? So to some degree, this comment I think is right on the money, because at a certain point, you kind of have to have something else besides numbers. And the cool thing is, I'll say this correctly, Majestics obfuscate the numbers. In a lot of ways, the way that Majestics have played is they've kind of hidden the numbers and allowed you to kind of do this gradient thing, where that technically represents more value than it does based on the number, right? The digit says 3, and so therefore I get 3 out of it. But Majestics and Legendaries and certain types of equipment allow you to fudge those numbers a little bit and extract, virtual value out of cards. We lose that in a format like this. And so in some way, shape, or form, I do think that they need to continue this right here. Create alternate play patterns that allow you at lower rarities to mess the numbers a little bit. I like this one a lot. This is from Valeriac's Sword. It says, I have both good and bad thoughts on Silver Age. I'll start with the bad. Since it's a format that only uses lower rarity cards, I think it will be a more bland experience of Fab. It is still Fab, and I do think Fab is very dynamic, but this is exactly the sentiment that was echoed by the previous commenter. When people play TCGs, they want to do powerful and flashy effects, and I think that will be missing here. And that's what the Living Legend format allows you to do. And in fact, when the Living Legend format was first being talked about, James White said that you play this format to do the powerful thing, right? That's the hook in some way, shape, or form. I'm doing broken stuff. I think he said specifically broken and then a curse word. But either way, that was the point, right? I think the format will be lots of 3 for 7s and 0 for 4s, and whoever gets the most number value wins. In some ways, I think that is actually accurate. That's exactly what I just described. And in other ways, it isn't a lot of 3 for 7s. It's kind of a lot of 3. It's more 0 for 4s and more number values. But I have found that to be the case in some ways. There's some spikiness of Blitz where you had like these really big powerful turns. And of course, because you're playing young heroes, those power turns feel even more powerful. But at the same time, it is a very numbers heavy game. But I think I also don't see why established players would play this instead of CC, with the exception of higher tier events featuring it. Exactly that. They would feature it. But also at the same time, I think you can enjoy a format that is a little bit more kind of even, kind of numbers based. Like, you might like that. There's people out there that play heroes that are all numbers based, right? Because they enjoy that aspect of the game. For the good, I think the price is obviously the big thing. It's insanely low. No one can complain about card prices or card accessibility and use the excuse to not play the game. Yep. I think you can use heroes from the game's entire history, and that's the other hook. That's what LL format also declares, but here it's being done at a budget level. And so the fundamental question, and I'll round it out with this, is this. Where do these two formats live going forward? Classic Constructed, I think, will always remain the tent peg format going forward. Silver Age has begun to cement itself, and of course, through care and cultivation, like you're growing a plant, is going to flourish into the classic, casual, budget-friendly format. that eventually will make its way into what I believe is going to be a dual format World Championship tournament. I do think that's where they're kind of like hinting at, and I think that definitely could exist. They did it for Worlds 1. It was Blitz and it was Classic Constructed. Silver Age and Classic Constructed makes total sense. But then what do they do with the Living Legend format? It's a format that still has value in the sense that you can play your Classic Constructed heroes, you can play these incredibly powerful cards that you no longer have access to, but can it ever be balanced? Like, are the heroes just too far apart from powerful to heroes that are just kind of limping along and got to Living Legend after 5 years? Like your Kanos of the world? Well, Kano's not a good example, but you get the picture, right? Is there ever going to be a way for that disparity to be, brought together, that gap to be closed? And if not, does this format just no longer exist in the next year or 2 years or 3 years? That's the real question. And I don't know the answer, but maybe you do in a comment below. And if you do, leave it down there so that I can learn from you. And maybe we can do another one of these. If you guys enjoy this, if you like hearing me talk and read your comments and we can discuss this, let me know that in a comment below as well. And of course, if this is something you enjoy, make the number go to the other number. As always, thanks for watching.